line with, let's say, in one of those themes, to contact me, and we want to engage a lot more people. In the past, Open has had at most 3 or 4 people in the Boston area contributing to the chapter, but we want to increase the number to something like 12 to 15 people. We already have about 5 people who are contributing to Open. So the 5 themes are, the first theme, of course, is what we call, as Imran Kutwai said, leadership. So we want to have events where established entrepreneurs come to speak, and we learn from them. I can easily see that by attending a lot of Open events over the years, I have personally benefited tremendously. I've traveled to New York to listen to Shahid Khan, the entrepreneur who runs a $4 billion enterprise, sole owner of a $4 billion revenue company, so obviously the valuation is far more than that. And I've had instances where peculiar insights, very peculiar insights of entrepreneurship, the kind of insights you get you don't get them on Bloomberg, for example, every evening at 7 p.m. That doesn't happen because they don't bring unique entrepreneurs on display. On this past Saturday in Silicon Valley, we listened to Tariq Farid, who started with a small flower shop, and today has a $500 million enterprise that every business magazine or channel is talking about. And you probably have heard of this company, Edible Arrangements. He was a tremendously inspirational speaker. In fact, he got a standing ovation from 600 people. Nearly 150 people were not of Pakistani origin. They were from all over the place, from Native Americans to students from China, entrepreneurs from China, from various other countries. So I would encourage you to participate more. So that's the first theme of leadership, particular insights about starting your business, about scaling the business. That would be very helpful for the younger community. The second theme that is a particularly Boston flavor and very close to my heart, since I was a grad student here from 86 to 88, is how do we tap into the research or the commercializable aspect of research that happens at MIT, Harvard, and many other universities in the Boston area. In the past, we have not really focused that much on this theme, but it is something very, very tangible and very Bostonian that we have here, and we should make full use of that asset. Think of having Mark Zuckerberg speaking at an Open event, mentoring people while he was at Harvard, just about to form Facebook in the next 6 months. What excitement would a person like that generate, within the community? The third theme is Boston being the second largest hub in the U.S. of venture capital and private equity initiatives, would be to bring people of that expertise from venture capital community and the private equity community to mentor people, to come and tell youngsters of the community if they were to start a new company, how to structure it, how to write, let's say, an executive summary or a business plan to be submitted to a VC company. I know the first time I had to write it myself, there was no book available at that time. 15 years ago, such facilities did not exist. So I remember I wrote a very childish and kind of inward-looking business plan, which didn't have all the aspects that were needed to catch the eye of a venture capitalist. The fourth theme is to structure a mentoring program, which would be a 1-year program which would have structure. For example, regularized workshops offered by senior charter members of Open or the board members of Open, or we would invite people to participate in that activity, and they would take the young people, whether they are, let's say, even high school kids, or people who are in the bachelor's program or master's program, just about to graduate, through a more formal, incremental program of mentorship over a 1-year period. Fine? And that would be a dream, if we can do that in the next year to 18 months in our chapter. And finally, another aspect which we often ignore. People are very successful businessmen here. Within our, people of Pakistani American heritage, we have people who have generated substantial wealth, are very well off. But we want to encourage them to participate in what I call social responsibility or socially responsible initiatives. Things like focusing on, let's say, the power problems in Pakistan right now. We need to focus on several of such aspects. They might not necessarily be just Pakistan oriented. They could be, related to issues right here in the U.S., but which are not directly, related to making money, which are kind of the, socially responsible things that entrepreneurs should do. Okay, so my request to, I've taken a bit longer than I should have, my request to the community here is to participate more, identify a particular theme, one of these 5 that you might be interested in, and contact me and come forward and say what you can do for Open. Because this is about doing and giving back to the community. Thank you. I would like to welcome a delegation of Pakistani entrepreneurs and researchers who are our guests today. And I would like to introduce Mr. Azhar Rizvi, who's leading the delegation. And he will introduce the purpose of the delegation, and hopefully you will have presenters who will certainly assure you that things in Pakistan are not all bleak, that we have a lot of hope and rising entrepreneurship in the home country itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Kivan, and thank you very much to all of you here today on a Saturday morning to listen to us and meet the delegation of Pakistan. I'd like to sort of start where Kivan ended. The role Open has played, is playing and has played. And to be honest, we would not have been here today if Open would not have started working with us in Pakistan about 6 years ago. And the journey started when myself and there is Imran Saeed. And Imran, we were going for a cup of coffee to Costa, then he got a call from Ken Morse. And Ken Morse and Bill Oley, two of the great guys. Ken is the founding co-founder of 3Com and also the founding managing director of MIT, Entrepreneurship Center here at MIT. He got a call, he was really disturbed over a development that for the past 1 year he had been working with the government of Pakistan to establish 2 entrepreneurship centers back at home, one at Lambton and at IBA. But the government changed and the whole plan got back on the back burner. So now the issue was how to keep them engaged. So myself and Imran thought about starting a training program for Pakistani IT entrepreneurs. So please keep them engaged for a small time frame and then see how things develop. So Ken and Bill, in fact Ken and Bill, who is now the current managing director, they started coming to Pakistan and we did 4 training programs for them. And these training programs were financial excellence, marketing excellence, operational excellence, and the CEO summit. That happened in 2007. During that period, Ken said, after he had met like 200 odd CEOs and CFOs of IT companies, he said, son, you need to have a business plan competition here. So I was taken to a training program in Norway. That is itself another story. And how he got me the visa in 7 days. A Pakistani getting a visa in 7 days for Norway was a tough job. And I got the visa on 23rd of March. Embassy was specially open. Got the visa, went to Norway, got the training, came back, and had to build a lot of courage, discuss with Imran that the 100K startup plan of MIT would not work in Pakistan because startup was not a sort of going thing in Pakistan in those days. So we customized that program and we started calling it BAP, Business Acceleration Program. And that is the flagship of MIT Enterprise Forum, Pakistan, and Open back at home. And through that program, we have, alhamdulillah, up till now trained 250 companies. And the process is that we invite companies every year in June and July for the competition. They have to submit a small executive summary. Based on that, we select 10, 15, 20 odd sort of companies to the competition. For the first 2 months, we help them to write a business plan, because most of them have never written a business plan. They're usually techies, come up with an idea, start a company, and move on. So we help them write a business plan. And after that, we connect them with a wonderful community of open Pakistani diaspora in the US. Imran Saeed, Imran Nasrullah, Imran Khan, Imran Kidwai, then Jamshed Khan. On the East Coast, on the West Coast, we have Idris Kothari, a lot of them, 50 or 60 odd open members. Then they coach Pakistani participants, the IT companies, for a period of 6 weeks, over telephone, over Skype and all that. And the result is that, and then every year, November, December, we hold a business plan sort of finals in which 5 companies sort of come and compete. And the top 3 are brought to MIT for a 1-week training program. All the activities sponsored. We don't get money from the government or either this USAID. In the past 5 years, 6 years, the 7 competition, we have sort of collected around $225,000, out of which $35,000 to $40,000 in kind have been contributed by open members here, as well as the time that they give is invaluable. I mean, you can't sort of put any number to that. Calling these up young companies and CEOs in the middle of the night or during the day. And the results are humongous in the sense that the company that won the competition in 2007, Zafar Khan, he was just doing $300,000 per year. And the first orientation program we did in Karachi, he was there and he was leaving the room. I said, Zafar, kidhar ja rahe ho yaar? He said, Azhar bhai, I think somebody is going to steal my business plan. Because the mindset in 2007 was that IT companies did not used to share their business plans. They didn't want to talk about them. So I said, ruk jao, nuksan nahi hoga. He stayed back, and today, last year probably, Imran was also on the board of that company, probably closed at $50 million, Imran? $30 million. From 300,000 to $30 million. And all because once he has won the competition, came here, got trained, then Imran got on the board, Ken Morse got on the board, and a couple of other gentlemen on the board, and they have been taking him along. MashaAllah. And I can talk about 40 other companies which we have been tracking. Overall impact has been in $1 billion. Valuation probably more than that. So this is the kind of help that we have received from Open, and without that it would not have been possible that we would have been here today, and these companies, mashallah, they are doing so well. And now we have got some good success stories. Of the new entrepreneurs know that they can also be Zafar Khan, or they can be Abdul Aziz of Lumensoft, who came to competition 2 years ago with a software running at 80 odd retail outlets, PS software. Within 2 years, he has moved from 80 stores to 1,600 stores all over the country and 6 countries in the region. So this is the kind of help that we receive from Open. So I encourage all the young students over here to join Open. The best way to contribute to Pakistani IT companies, industry, and for themselves as well, because they're learning for themselves as well. The second task that we did was we started working with the academia, and we started business plan competitions for the universities, IB and NUST. Over the past 3 years, we have sort of held 8 competitions in which 10,000 students have been trained. For the program that we do with MIT Enterprise Forum and Open in Pakistan, the theme is Think Global, be a $1 billion company. But when you work with the students, we talk about Think Local, building products and services for people living below poverty line. When you go with this theme, they usually think we want them to be Edhi or Mother Teresa or start charity organization. But after the training program, they realize it's a big market over here. Multi-billion-dollar market that has not been untapped. That's not been tapped. And if they focus and start developing products and services for them, it was not only for their good well-being, but they will also make a lot of money, because when you start developing product for this segment, the cost of capital, the capital itself requirement is very low. Market penetration is more possible, more doable, because the big boys in the Procter & Gamble and Leo Brothers are not focusing on them. So we have done that, mashallah, and the result is that about 2 years back, President Obama launched an initiative by the name of GISTEC, Global Innovation through Science and Technology. And MIT Enterprise Forum partnered with them, and they have 2 competitions every year, Ideas competition and Business Plan competition. To their surprise, the first year, the total number of, and it is designed for 43 Muslim countries. So students and IT entrepreneurs and startups, they all compete in that. For the past 2 years, Pakistan, mashallah, has the highest number of business plans gone to that competition are from Pakistan, about 35 to 30% each year. And among the top 10 winners, 3 to 4 are from Pakistan. And now we are talking to them to work with us and establish some incubation centers back at home. So I was in Washington, D.C., had a meeting with their headquarters, and now they want to put up a fund of $10 million, which will help us to facilitate 28 odd incubation centers, which have now been established at various universities in Pakistan, known as ORIX, Office of Research, Innovation and Commercialization. Third area that we are working now is with the academia, the researchers, and with ICT R&D Fund in HEC. We are now training the researchers. And again, the program started with the help of Ken Morse. He was there last year, and we spoke to ICT R&D Fund. Now, ICT R&D Fund is a government sort of organization which gets funding from telecom sector. So by law, all the telecom sector companies in Pakistan have to contribute 0.5% of the revenues to that fund. So you have like now $60 million in the fund, out of which 1.8 billion has been invested in the research at various universities. So this program that we have started conducting there is with Ken that for the first, we invited 60 researchers from top universities in the ICT sector, trained them for a period of 4 days. That was done by myself on commercializing the research and writing the business plan. So in 4 days we helped them to develop a business plan, and after that, again, selected 25 top research ideas. Another, for a month, again worked with them to sort of crystallize their, sort of fine-tune the business plans. And later, Ken and Laura, both husband and wife, came to Pakistan and did a 2-day training program known as Global Sales Strategies for Pakistani companies. And in that program, we invited around 25 of the researchers, and along with that 25 CEOs of IT companies to build industry academy linkages. And after that we selected 5 each from each category, and they are here today. They went to Washington DC, had a great time in Washington DC, courtesy Open, had several sort of networking meetings with Open members, with the US State Department, Department of Commerce, CRDA. In Silicon Valley, they had the opportunity of presenting their projects to a large audience of Pakistani, 600 plus people there. So they sort of had the opportunity of meeting a lot of IT entrepreneurs and investors in Silicon Valley, and now we are today in Boston. Had a networking dinner a couple of days ago, courtesy Q1, and met Open members here. And today we are here at MIT. All these researchers and CEOs will be presenting their sort of projects and program to you. So inshallah, hopefully, and again, alhamdulillah, I'm pleased to report that most of them have been able to either form alliances, some of them got business, and some are talking about future partnership to work on building successful enterprises in the US. So I'll start with the presentation and request Sadaf, Dr. Sadaf Sajjad to come and present her project to the audience. Thank you.
Very much. Sadaf Sajjad, and I belong to academia sector, basically a researcher. Recently, a project has been funded to me that is just completed, a funded project through ICT R&D funds. The Ministry of IT funded that project, and that is completed. And thank you, Azerbaijan transformed me into a kind of entrepreneur, and from researcher to an entrepreneur. Now I am here to present you as a business plan. I will just introduce that project and then the business plan about it. So, the project is about healing brain tumors in children using techniques of psychotherapy through a computer game. My work is based on giving mental therapies through computerization. This is my work, and my mission is to provide psychotherapy to everybody at home. So what we have done is that we have computerized psychotherapy and made it into a game for cancer patients. Brain tumor in children is the second largest deadly disease in the world, as the statistics reported by WHO. The recovery rate among the children can be increased if given proper psychotherapy along with the traditional treatment, that is medicine and chemotherapy. So, but there is a problem that for every 4,000 people in Pakistan, there is one psychologist available for them, and in US, for 300 people, one psychologist. But every psychologist is not a psychotherapist. So, and the cost for this treatment of brain tumor is $50,000. That is for the treatment, medicines and all. Cost for psychotherapy, that is the average cost for 1 hour of psychotherapy, it costs $500. So we came up with the idea, and we provided a solution that we should provide psychotherapy through computerization, and this imagery psychotherapy is based on the fact that every idea or thinking brings chemical change in the body. If the thinking is positive, it improves the overall health. So, because fighting a disease is just a matter of knowing your own army which is inside your body, and cancer can occur when the weapon fails to fight. And on Google search, if we see that there are 550,000 hits monthly on brain tumor, 550,000 hits on mind games, and 1.22 million hits on imagery. So what we have done is that we have embedded psychotherapy into a video game. We have tested this video game on 76 children. 38 children were provided with this therapy and 38 were the control group, or the group which was not provided with this therapy. The 38 children who played this game have shown improvement that was 60% over the children who didn't play this game. So you can see the results were, there was a significant difference in their anxiety level, depression, their anger, their disruptive behavior, and the self-concept was marked, that was improved with the children who played this game. The oncologist and the parents, they also reported the same, and they also reported that the children started taking their medicines in time and with less resistance. Previously they were taking the medicines, of course the chemotherapy was going on, the medication was going on, but with lot of resistance. So this was a very positive effect. Now, the market plan, our target customers are, as we know that there is an increase in rate of market for health games, and every family in search of any hope will buy this product. We assume that, and oncologists, NGOs, and parents will also go for this game. We will launch this game for PC laptops through Google Play, for Android through Play Store, for iPhone, iPad through App Store. We will also target the hospitals, oncologists, through NGOs, NPOs, and WHO. Our customers, the children, will be targeted through media coverage, Google Ads, and Make-A-Wish Foundation. And in Pakistan, we are already in contact with the Make-A-Dream Foundation and Pakistan Television and other media. We will be using freemium and premium policy because we will be giving this game to other like oncologists or NGOs, and they will be using it. In the first year, we will be targeting 1,000 children and 2,000 in the second and 3,000 in the year 3. So initially, this is the investment which is needed. Game is already ready. The product is with us. The market of gaming is on boom, as we know, and therapy through gaming can prove some good results, and we are working on developing other therapeutic games for psychological disorders which are not requiring the medications. This is the product which is ready, and we are working on other disorders which do not require, they just require psychotherapy, and medication is not required in that. This is our future plan, and we have started working on it. Thank you very much.
We have a 3-minute question answer session, so if you have any question, you want to
Go back to the investment slide. What is it? $1,000?
It's $1 million.
$1 million.
1,000K.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was a very great check. How many children have been treated and what is the success?
38 were given, like in Pakistan, when we did a research on 76 children, 38 were given the therapy, and there were 60% improvement in those patients as compared to those who were not given this therapy.
What was the duration of that therapy? What was the duration of that therapy?
They were 3 months time. Daily they were given this game 3 times with their medicines. Morning.
And the parents support the cost, or it's all done on the free basis or what?
It was on the free basis because we were testing it in the hospitals. 3 hospitals were taken in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, and we also went to Lahore, Shaukat Khana. So because brain tumor children, to get them in these hospitals, it was the sample was not that much in that area only, 3 cities of Pakistan.
Yeah, because most of these cases probably come out of the poor people, where that, no septic system, none of good water, and so on and so forth. So can those in the long run, and those poor people can afford, or will be provided some assistance, or how is it going to work out? It may be a good program, but how about the cost?
Particularly for this testing purpose, we didn't charge anything. Yes, about the cost, that as we said that it will be on the premium and premium policy. We will be giving this game to the wards, hospitals, NGOs who with this cause, who is working on this cause, and the children in Pakistan might be targeted but they will be given this therapy free of charge.
Yeah, at the hospital, but what happens, they need long time ago.
So this product is ready on the CD.
Okay.
This is, yeah, so this is a ready CD.
The idea is also if we get the proper funding, we can actually provide that is the cost we have written, $400 that is with the iPad. So for the long run, if we can provide the person with the tablet or the iPad with the help of obviously can use WHO or the investors if they want to.
I have a question.
Yeah, I have a question for that. So over a 3-year period, you can generate revenues of 1,050,000 in profits of 3.4 million.
No. We need, we are the researchers, we were just transformed from.
It is cumulative, Imran. It is cumulative.
It's
Yeah,
cumulative, what we are saying.
उन्होंने 3 साल का ऐड कर दिया है. That's what they've done.
What we
400
are
Still, on a cumulative basis, you will have cumulative revenues of 1 million and cumulative profit of 1.2 million.
Yeah.
Imran,
Net income will be 1.2 million. The
basically
profit
that
will-
shows they need help of someone over here who can help them with financing, as well as आपके numbers. Okay, you talk about technology, how they've done it, probably that will be more relevant.
How are
Talk
you-
about technology, the program, financing, yes, they have said surrendered, sorry ji, nahi aanda. Okay, yeah, Kivan.
Now, when I watch my own children playing these games, I get stressed out. They cause more stress. So what are some of the qualitative things in the game itself which you feel kind of lead to lessening of that stress?
Okay. This is not just a normal game because it's not for all the children. It's only for the brain tumors children. So basically, the awareness is the basic thing. Which the game starts with the awareness that there is some alien inside your body, but the army is also inside you which can fight that alien. So white blood cells are actually morphed into a weapon, whatever the child will suggest that weapon, that this weapon I want for my white blood cells. And it will fight with my tumor, and ultimately the fight will end on the destruction of the tumor. And during this game, the child is taking medicine because the power is getting down, and if the child is not taking the medicine, the tumor power is getting up. So this is the awareness going on. Take the medicine, take the vegetable, take the fruit, which is required. So this is the awareness game.
And how long does it take?
This is 10 minutes. 10 minutes therapy game. It has 3 levels because tumor patient cannot concentrate for a long time. So they can also stop the game at the time and they may start playing later.
Can I ask a question?
She's trying to ask.
So I love the idea that you're providing psychotherapy in Pakistan. That's awesome. There's such a huge dearth of that and such low awareness for it. So I commend you for doing this. I really was curious to ask about, you were talking about future scenarios for using this kind of therapy for phobias and other stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
We have recently started making a plan for it. Like what we have done is that we are making therapy that is known as exposure therapy or flooding that is used for phobic patients, in which we are exposing that patient to the particular situation from which he or she is having anxiety or phobia. So that is actually embedded into a game, that situation in a 3D environment, and that instead of going to that place and removing the phobia, we are introducing it into a game, and that is also for adults. So it is following all the therapeutic steps which are actually traditionally done in a one-to-one individual settings, but it is now computerized. We are making like that. This is how we are working on the anxieties of the people.
Kivan, you had a question?
Yeah, so my question actually is a little bit of a follow-up to what you asked, just for clarity. So is the game, in fact, just a behavioral modification that makes the child feel good? So he takes his medicine and he eats the right food, which in turn obviously helps fight the disease. Or is there something inherent in the game which stimulates parts of the brain to produce chemicals that you mentioned, which actually assist in fighting the disease itself? So which one is it?
It is the behavior modification, and ultimately the assume that it will, because that's what I said, that chemical changes will take place. If the modification is positive, ultimately it will change. So, and it is based on the researches done with the therapies. Like
And we went to Koch yesterday, and they are also working on this sort of models. Like the ultimate is that these changes will bring a positive impact on health. Yeah,
The game called remission. Are you familiar with the game called remission?
yeah,
Right, so that's, it's also
yeah.
in oncology, pediatric oncology.
That has not embedded the psychotherapy in it. That is for the teenagers. Our target is 4 to 12 years. So that's another thing. And that is a third-person shooter. The fantasy is that somebody is going inside you and fighting for you. Here we are saying that you are fighting. Your white blood cells are morphing into the weapons, obviously. These are all selected by the children. The syringe was selected by the children. We put the daggers and the swords and many things. They said that syringe is their weapon. So that's that sort of a thing. Yes.
You said that there was a 60% improvement of patients that use this as opposed to those that do not. What was the metric that was used to evaluate that improvement?
it's a psychological standardized test, Beck inventory for you, and that is used for to measure the anger, depression, anxiety. They-
Was it a physiological test or anything?
No,
Based on their
It is a-
actual improvement?
No, it's not a physiological.
It is not a physiological test. It is pre-test we did and post-test. We just asked, it's a questionnaire kind of structured questions we used to ask and write.
I think
As
So
we
in terms of the
speak,
improvement, it's really a psychological improvement, not a medical.
It was a on the because the in terms of behavior we said that they improved in terms of behavior.
Last question, please. Yeah, one last question.
As we speak, what percentage of Pakistani population has got need this kind of treatment? Per thousand, how many? 100,000, how many? Do you have any figures?
Unfortunately, WHO reported that in US daily there are 11 children who are diagnosed with brain tumor, but in Pakistan we don't have such statistics available. So that is the like what we searched it, but on WHO we couldn't find that how many in Pakistan particularly, but we found it in US. That was 11 children are diagnosed daily on the basis.
in Shaukat Khanum there is only one psychologist available. So at Shaukat Khanum.
Thank you very much. We can discuss our offline discussion as well. Shaykh Mirza, can you please be the next presenter? Thank you.
My name is Shahid Mir, and what I'm here to talk about is three people, I, me, and Mike. But I have to introduce myself. I've been in IT for about 30 years. I went to Canada for my grad school. I moved back to Pakistan in 1983, and with the passion to do something in Pakistan. So, alhamdulillah, my first love in Pakistan was PCCI FAST, what they call it, FAST NUSIS now, National University of Computer and Emerging Sciences. I was the second employee of the foundation, and I set up the first institute. I sit on their academic council still, no commercial relations. Secondly, what I did was to establish my company called Systems Research in 1986. That became one of the forerunners in bringing IT services to Pakistan. So in 1994, we brought medical transcriptions, medical billing, and all the related services that go into healthcare IT in Pakistan, and we grew to about 400 people. This was pre-IT bubble being burst here in the US. During this time, I wrote a concept paper, and then the Prime Minister somehow saw it. I had no direct connection with Benazir, Shahid, as we call it, and Pakistan Software Export Board was made to foster the culture of IT in Pakistan and just take software exports forward. So 95 to 98, I worked with the government, headed the board, served 2 prime ministers. Came back to my business, Systems Research, and we crashed big time in 1999. It took us a couple of years to get rid of the debris, come back up, and come up with a billing system for telecom companies, because that was the emerging, the new developments in Pakistan. I say this with not too much pride, but I seem to have learned with my 3 crashes that I had in business, and they call people like me serial entrepreneurs, and that gives a lot of respect to failures, what we used to call in our times. What I have here now to present to you is something new. It's an innovation, I'd say. There's no great formula of Coke that's been developed. Telecom billing as a service is something that we've developed. We conceptualized it in 2006 when we saw cloud computing and SaaS building up. And in 2008, we were funded by National ICT R&D Fund to convert our enterprise billing system into telecom billings as a service. The market need is very simple. Deregulation has taken place in telco sector all over the world, and it's given rise to hundreds of small-sized telcos. We never used to have bundled services coming to our doorstep about 15 years ago. When you have internet, telephone, everything else comes on one bandwidth on your doorstep. And you have this, what we call now, a convergent billing. You get billed in one bill for everything that you're using. New technologies have given rise to these bundled services and small-sized telcos. So deregulation and consolidation of technologies is what we see has given rise to market need in our area, which is billing. Billing is the jugular vein of any telco or any business for that matter, because your revenue flows through the billing. Legacy telco billing systems are small telco unfriendly. They are very expensive to purchase, customize and scale, very slow to deploy and adapt to changing customer needs, and require very expensive data centers. So the pain is really high cost structure and lack of agility. When it comes to large companies, and to name a few, Amdocs, that has 25% of the entire world billing market is in one company. And you'd all be amazed to know that 25% of the number of subscribers all over the world, the data sits in Tel Aviv. So legacy billing systems are large, they're lethargic, they're lack of agility, and hence the market size that we measured and straight cost and some of the reports that we got out of the market, the total telecom billing market is $50 billion in size, which means that's the amount of money that telcos all over the world spend on billing. This is hardware and software. Total opportunity size for us is about $1 billion in the next 3 years. We intend to capture 1% of this market in the next 3 years. Our target customers are small operators in Pakistan, 2 of which we've already signed up. One has been a paying customer over the last year, and we recently signed up a WiMAX operator in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. CLECs that are known in the US after the deregulation took place here, there are about 900 of them in the United States, and there's a total size of market that they will spend on, the amount of money that they'll spend on billing is about $50 million, and we intend to start a local company. I already have a company called TBAS.com Inc., a Washington, Delaware-based company in the US. And it is dormant at this time, but we intend to launch our business out of that company. Our solution is basically something that guarantees at least 40% cost reduction in your billing operation cost. And it can rise up to 75%. We want telco billing as a service, which is TBAS, to be the Salesforce.com of telco billing. They are our leaders, and we are following Salesforce.com's business model. One of the questions people generally ask me, a couple of questions: why should we trust you with our CDRs, our customer detailed records, that will be sent on some cloud and people might be looking at them and so on. So my clear answer is, if Salesforce.com can grow up to a multi-billion-dollar company and have 100,000 customers, where everybody is putting their sensitive sales data on a cloud, so what's wrong with sending your encrypted CDRs onto the cloud, and what will somebody do with them, right? So that answers a lot of questions. Our solution has literally zero capex, because when we start off with you, we don't want you to, even during trials, we don't want you to spend any money on hardware, on software, any operating software, no SLAs. We just say, give us your CDR or a stream of your customer detailed records, and we generate the bills for you and the reports. And then you can decide whether to stay with your enterprise system or to cut it and go on to us. Our solution is based on very low OPEX, because it's all subscription-based service, and you pay per use. So you could have a flat charge of, say, X thousand dollars per month, where you pay us that much money and use the system as much as you want, or we could bill you on a per subscribers basis. So TBAS is a telco billing solution that is affordable on a pay-per-use pricing. Due to its pay-per-use pricing, it's feature-rich and rapidly deployable, highly scalable, and simple to customize, and it's NGOS compliant. I should maybe enlarge this point a little bit, because new generation operation support systems is a standard like ISO of telecom billing. It's part of TM Forum, which is now being funded by telcos from all over the world. 100% cloud deployment, we can do it for you. If you're leery of sending your sensitive data onto the cloud, we can do a hybrid deployment for you, whereby we keep the sensitive data on-site and send the rest off-site. And an enterprise deployment, where somebody, say in Qatar's case, for example, you can't send your CDRs outside of the geographic bound. So what we say is, we will put everything in a box, and we put that as a virtual cloud in your data center. In the cases of very small telcos, we are even offering them that we'll give the hardware for free. We won't even charge them. For them, it's a cloud, whether it's being run out of the data center or somewhere up there. Get that? 2 more minutes? Thank you. Our business model, we already have a first paying customer. We have 2 in the pipeline, 1 in Pakistan, 1 in Argentina. I told you about the TBAS.com Inc. company, a Delaware corporation. We will go to market through 3 engagement models. We go directly to the customer, that's a direct engagement model. We go through a partnership model whereby people will take or will be licensed to resell our services and our the implementation and training, and share a good part of the revenue, or it is a referral model where you introduce us to somebody and we have a package pretty attractive for you. In parallel, we will engage distributor channels worldwide, system integrators, consulting companies, and a powerful portal. We are already working on that portal. Inshallah, I have some plans, and next year, if at any forum we meet, we will show you the portal as being one of the most powerful in the world. Our next steps are to go for WiMAX operators or small companies, 900 CLECs in the US, and I say we are investor ready. This was what I presented in Silicon Valley, and I forgot to mention that I was the runner-up in the Entrepreneur Idol competition among 14 Silicon Valley companies, and I was the oldest in the age group level. but it was quite something, rubbing my shoulders against 20-somethings. And alhamdulillah, the judges thought I was worthy of the runner-up position. We are now ready to sign a deal. I had my lawyers and all of that, so just about, we have product development is done, our field testing is done, our revenue, we have first paying customer, we have 2 more in the pipeline, and our vision for TPAS, that has now been, I'd just like to get the next 30 seconds with Azhar, is that this vision I had was the future of telecom. Now here is where this entire trip precipitated for me when I was talking to our friend Tanveer Saab, and just over dinner day before yesterday. And this slide I had Tanveer Saab for all of this presentations in BC and in Santa Clara. We developed telco billing as a service, and I thought we will morph into utility billing as a service, and then subscription billing as a service. Now here when I talk to an expert, one out of many of us, he says, why don't you do it now? You will triple your market. So here is my learning, thanks to Azhar Bhai, thanks to Open, thanks to all of you, where what I was thinking of going into a couple of years later, he says, do it now. So that really opens up my base of potential customers, and I go into something which is much simpler to do. That's all static records. I mean, if I bill for Newsweek, it's very, very static records. It's not like people are roaming in. So my key risks in my business are large billing vendor comes in and sweeps the market. We are unable to ramp up as planned. Obviously, we need money at this time. There's some engineering to be done in Pakistan. And I consider something I learned in the martial arts is you do not compromise speed for accuracy. We were always taught to hit back. If you don't, you will lose out on time and somebody's going to come in and take over. So we also have plans on, through the raised funds, to go into Malaysia and India as our very small sized replication of our stuff. So this is pretty much it. Thank you very much.
2 or 3 quick questions. Yeah.
Actually, just one friendly comment. I understand your comment about not compromising speed for accuracy.
It's not billing accuracy.
Right.
It's not billing accuracy.
So just be careful with your pitching to billing customers.
No, I'm saying let's go forward and sign up customers as small as they are and not wait for the accurate, the best, and the biggest.
Any other question here?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Well, with the start of this, what you're discussing, with the boy coming in and all the things, and people have small providers have, they're using those soft switches.
Indeed.
And with this, the problem is that whenever, whosoever is developing those soft switches, whether it's developed in America or Russia, whatever, they come up with a module which has the built-in billing system.
I know you. It's a big issue for us. But on the other side, we are into developing a soft switch too. So I didn't talk about the future of our engineering. We are very much looking at it as going in the reverse direction.
But don't you think you are already behind the ball because it's already been pretty much available in the market from a $2,000 all the way up to $50,000. Depending on the need.
But adaptation of those soft switches is also taking its time. And on our side, we have this. It's a very slow-moving business. It's not like that very smart-looking chat box जो बनाता है कोई and you get millions of customers immediately. It's a very slow-moving market. And to change the billing system or to change your switch from a traditional Siemens car or some other switch into a soft switch, it's like going through a heart surgery. And not everybody's doing it. But the new companies that are coming up, new telcos like MVNOs and all of that, they are looking at soft switches as one of their answers. So where they're coming out in, we are also going in. So, we'll meet up at some point.
One last question, Imran. See, Imran.
So this market is obviously a very attractive market and it's projected to grow very rapidly. The only thing is, it's a pretty crowded market now. There's a lot of interest, right? So it wasn't clear to me from your presentation how you're
जी, जी.
cycling, etc. So the question is, if you're in the Pakistan market, or that's great, go global ambitions, how do you compete against this?
Okay, one of the things I've seen is we might be partnering with one of the companies that is morphing its enterprise billing system into, and I got to know of a couple of companies during this trip. So what my response to them or my offering to them would be, don't go in for 2 to 3 years of R&D, talk to us, look at our engineering, improve it, and plug it into what you guys already have. You have a base of customers. That might be a quick entry into this market. Secondly, I know we've been delayed. There have been structural issues, in our funding agency over the last almost 2 years, and we are a bit late in the market. Pakistani market is, if we call telco to be slow, Pakistan telco market is very, very slow. So and that's the reason you heard this presentation maybe after 2.5 years, and I have got 10 customers to show. I only have 3. But during this time, we are now also a 5 application suite rather than a 3 application suite when we spoke in Karachi, if you remember, just a couple of years ago. So then we've had mediation, rating, and billing, this is the 4. Now we have BI and customer care as well. And we're coming up with revenue, with inventory and fraud management system also, inshallah, in the next year or so. So, and signing up these 3 customers was extremely, extremely difficult. So the answer to your question is, one, I'm surely going to piggyback and partner with one of the players in the market and treat him as a reseller, save him on the R&D, and then share some sort of a future with that company.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Syed Ahmed and I'm CEO of DPL. We are an IT outsourcing services company back there in Pakistan. I'm also Vice Chairman of Pakistan Software Houses Association. So I was not expecting kind of customers we serve in this presentation. So I'm not going to give a pitch about our company, but I'm going to talk about problem of innovation back there in Pakistan or other countries like us, like India and other places, developing countries. As you all know that outsourcing is close to a $400 billion industry, and yet it's seen as a very low value job, and most of the creativity and innovation happens here in the US, and all the key punching and low value jobs are outsourced. And our societies are not known for innovation. What's the problem and how can we solve that? So basically everyone wants as a free and creative person. But in countries like Pakistan, where religion and belief is very important to people, there's a certain set of restrictions or guidelines or how you're supposed to think about certain things. So we have a set of limitation put onto us through our religion. Now, depending on who has taught us religion, this circle can be big or small, but nevertheless, it's there. And then on top of that, we have societal norms which are very strict over there. I mean, over here, maybe at times people don't judge you a lot, and but over there, society plays a very important role in how you're supposed to act and how you're supposed to live your life and all that. So again, it's put some sort of limits on how you are going to think about things. And on top of that, friends and family come up with their own set of expectations. They hammer their own ideas into people's head. For many of you who would know, I mean, people would even choose their education or field or where they want to work and where they have to marry and this and everything. I mean, their family is going to dictate, and their friends are going to tell them about things. So everyone knows everything, and they tell you what to do. So you're not supposed to. So I mean, and you keep drawing circles of limitations on a person, and there's so much. I mean, again, whichever setting you go in, you find some set of limitation. You go in a government office, there's going to be a bureaucrat sitting there who has his own sort of mumbo jumbo there, and he's like, you have to comply with the rules and all that, and you can't be yourself there. So in the end, the person does not have space for his own thoughts, for his own personality. So basically, in the end, a person becomes a Kuein ka Mendak, where he's like just limited to, his own very small world, and he has not, he can't do think much. And the thing is, it's not even that harmonious, all the limitations and everything. It's like this. I mean, it's also vague and conflicting. I mean, it's not that the society is in line with the religion and it's in line with the families. Everything is so conflicted that it's mind-boggling. I mean, I give you a very sort of real example. Over there, let's say if whenever a young person grows up and becomes an adult, he knows that Islam, clearly his religion tells him that he cannot have an extramarital relationship. And the only way, and Allah knows that, and Allah he said that, okay, I give you a solution, you marry. And that's the way you can have, you can meet your needs. So, okay, now he's 17 years old and he wants to marry. But then the friends and family come in, no, you cannot marry because, you have to study. It's like 27 odd years. And then you have to establish yourself, have some home and everything. So by the time of 30, forget about marriage. Now, here's that guy thinking, what do I do? So religion, so he asked his family, what do I do? There's no answer. But so it's conflicted and there's no answer. And then the society comes in and it implements both sides of the conflicted things in its own way, in a very sort of sick kind of a way. It's like imposes it. So, in the end, the guy is really confused. So, so now what does the person do? That young boy learns to have multiple faces. He learns to be different people at different times and different settings. So in front of a Maulvi Sahab, he'll say, okay, I'm like all whatever religion says and everything. And then in front of his father, he'll be, oh, whatever you say, and in front of his friends, he's totally different personality. And then, in the end, he's everything but himself. And there are so many other examples. This is just one, believe me. So what's the connection to innovation with this? That it results in compliant people. A person who's supposed to say yes. Okay, Maulvi Sahab said this, so yes, I can say whatever, I cannot have my opinion. So my father says this, okay, I'll say yes. So we have compliant people there. So that's the solution, be compliant. We have multifaceted personalities. The other word I use for it is munafqat. So it's kind of that. So you don't see originality in people. And they're then afraid to take the lead because they're confused, they don't know what's right and wrong. So in the end, that personality, with that they're so used to everything that they come, when we hire them, they come to us and say, okay, I have these 10, 15 different personalities, what do you want me to be? So, I mean, and you know, so whatever the company tells them, okay, do this, and they'll just work like robots, drones, and do what they're told to do. So, I mean, the solution to this, I feel, is to free your mind, and you have to declare rebellion against the culture which is not working. I mean, it's like whatever the Gora Sahib left for us, we have to declare rebellion against that. And we need to have our own counterculture movement that we had in Silicon Valley in 1970s and that sort. But we can have it in our own way. And we need to define limited set of core values. I mean, I'm not saying follow Islam or not. I'm not saying follow society or not or whatever. Do your own thing, but decide it for yourself. That, okay, and keep it simple. Keep it to very small set of core values that you say, okay, I will live and die by those core values. I'm not going to leave them. But apart from that, but it's important to define that for your own self. If it's about religion, read and see what you want. If it's about anything else. So, so when you do this, you'll find out that religion becomes not just becomes a limitation, it gives a meaning and empowers you. And the traditions, they actually, rather than setting you back, the traditions actually makes you unique and makes you more creative, brings a new taste of things. And then friends, where your friends and family, they'll become your power. So basically, if some of you understand Punjabi, there's a Sufi poet who said, La ilaha di ramz nirali, illallah te nahi aana. It means you need to, La ilaha means, I mean, just get everything out there. I mean, first say no to everything, and then say, okay, there's one God. I mean, it's not that you can have everything in there at one time. So, I mean, basically you need to, so I'll just give you a very interesting case study. It's about when we decided we need to have a fun culture, an innovation-based culture like Zappos in Silicon Valley or something. And just think about having a Zappos culture in Pakistan. So it's a very simple thing we wanted to do. So we said anything we'll do it differently. We'll try to get that innovation kick in. And I asked my designer to come up with something very unique. So this is like a very normal type of employee cards that most people would design. But my designer also came up with another kind of employee card, which was very different. I mean, it's like imprisoned by excellence DPR. So we designed these two cards, and I said this is pretty cool, makes us unique and everything. Let's go with it. We need to have a fun culture. But I mean, believe you me, I didn't know. I mean, it was all havoc, and everyone was coming at it. I didn't know why this was such a complicated affair. So I mean, we have an internal social media. We did a poll, and 52% people said that we should not have these cards. And I'm like, why not? Why do you want to go with the boring cards that everyone has? And I mean, these are some of the comments. I can give you like 60 comments. One guy says, I don't, just 30.
Just 1 minute, talk about your customers and we have the question answer.
I just said comments. So I don't agree with this. We have a lot of issues when coming to office. There is security and we are in the red zone. I'm sure that an absurd picture like this will not make our life easier. Either says that company का mission तो पूरा हो जाएगा, but मैं नाके पे पकड़ा जाऊँगा. Someone says कि जी ये तो it shows dignity personality. I have no courage to show it to other people around me who come to corporate companies and all. And people came in with Islam, oh, you cannot change some, I mean, you cannot do it in Islam or something, I don't know. So, I mean, there are all sorts of issues against that, but the results, when they came in, our person, when he went to one of our guys, he didn't have any identity, he went to a military base, and the guards asked for him, he just had this card, he gave him. The next thing he knew, all the guards were standing around his card, laughing at the card, and they had a small, they had a good time, and they're like, we never had seen anything like it. The printer, he said, I've printed like thousands of cards, never seen anything like it. I mean, literally in a store, someone saw that, and would have a discussion about our company for half an hour in a supermarket or someplace. And just imagine people talking about a random company in a supermarket and how good it is. And many people asked us, can we join your company? I mean, this is so cool. So, so this is, and after people saw the results, they are like, started to open up. So basically, this is my, what I feel that if we have to deliver good services and good products, it's not about the coding, it's about building people, building the mindsets. And that's what we're doing. So that's my presentation is all about today. Thank you. Okay, I'll tell you briefly about my company. We have 50 people right now. We are looking to build an Infosys, but a better Infosys out of Pakistan, which works on a higher value things. We have worked for IKEA. We have a large corporate customers in America, like Auto Bytel, which is a public company. We have helped some startups exit for like